episode 399 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fans' weekly podcast of many topics, usually of the retro variety. And I will be your host today, Zach Wilkerson. And before we get into today's topic, which is an interesting one, I think, in the game we're going to be talking about, let me introduce our panel, starting with you, Ben Love.
Hi, everybody.
And Aleks Franiczek.
Hello.
And thanks both of you so much for joining me today. We're going to be talking today about Moon. It's called the Remix RPG, oftentimes called an anti-RPG, and we'll be sort of talking about sort of our experiences in the opening hours with this very strange game. It's I feel like I knew a fair amount about it just from word of mouth in terms of the way the story played out, but I knew very little about the way the gameplay played out. And I'm excited to talk about it. But before we get to that, I just want to kind of back up and talk about a little bit about like sort of the localization history of this game, and sort of some of the reasons why it got localized, and some of the obvious reasons why it probably didn't back in 1997. So as we just said, this was originally in 1997, not really RPG. In fact, it doesn't play almost anything like an RPG. And it was created by a studio called Love to Lick. And it was, I think, a lot of former Squaresoft employees. It sort of spun off of Squaresoft. And they decided to kind of make a game that is just like poking fun, in some ways poking fun at RPG elements, but also going a little deeper into some of the more, I guess, almost insidious elements of what it is to play an RPG. But it does not surprise me in any way, shape, or form that it wasn't localized back in 1997, because again, it does not play like anything that I've played, really, honestly. It's a weird combination of things. And then in 2015, obviously, Undertale is released, and Toby Fox talks about the fact that even though he hadn't played the game, he was aware of its premise. And I don't think it was ever fully fan translated. And apparently there were some efforts to fan translate it, but it kept falling by the wayside. But the design philosophy of it in a lot of ways informed what Toby Fox did with Undertale. Love is such an important part of both of these games. And then Tim Rogers, a former Kotaku writer and obviously the very famous now YouTube reviewer, who's extremely entertaining, becomes involved in the localization, and it gets released, I think, in 2019 for the Switch, and now it's available for a couple of other platforms as well. Is there any like big historical elements of that story that I've missed? I think Ben, in particular, you know more about this than I do.
Yeah, so the history of Love to Lick is really interesting. So, like you said, it's a bunch of people who were at Squaresoft. So, you've got Kenichi Nishi, who worked on Super Mario RPG, Yoshiro Kimura, who now runs Onion Games, who are the people that re-release Moon, and they keep making some new games and stuff. They're making Stray Children, which is supposed to come out in 2024. So he worked on Romancing Saga 2 and 3. And then you've got a few other people like Kazuyuki Kurashima, who worked on Live Alive. So a lot of pedigree there from Square developers. And then what's particularly interesting about Moon is after it came out, and then Love to Lick made a couple other games after that, and then they broke up. And so a bunch of different studios came out of that. And basically all of these developers that founded a new studio would then go on to make another game just like Moon. So you've got Vanpool, who is mostly known now for making those Dylan's Rolling Western games.
Mm-hmm.
But they made a game called Indonesia on the PlayStation 2, which is very similar to Moon. Then Kimura would go to form Punchline and make Tulip, which is also very similar to Moon. And then Skip was founded by Kenichi Nishi, and they made both Gift Pia and then Chibi Robo, which are also games that have a lot of similarities to Moon. So it didn't just inspire a bunch of games, like indie games that we know of now, but also a bunch of games right immediately after that, most of which never got localized either.
Yeah, it's fascinating how they sort of carve their own sort of niche and then like split off, and they continue to work within that niche, a niche that I mean, I think Tulip made it over here, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
And Chibi Robo, yeah.
yeah, but not a lot else has. And it's interesting to me that there's like this whole almost subgenre that is created by these people and sort of continued by these people. And Onion Games, obviously, sort of the biggest sort of maker of those well-known developer, but they're not very well known at all, right? And Stray Children is something that I'm curious to see how they're able to take some of those ideas into a more modern situation. Alex, is there anything that you're aware of that we're missing at this point in terms of our conversation here?
No, not really. It's just, yeah, really interesting that particularly like these employees who went to Left Square for Love to Lick were working on kind of their more experimental titles like Live Live and things like that. So it makes sense that once they found their own studio, they got to flex a lot of their creativity a lot more and kind of reach outside the genre. And I mean, as we're going to discuss soon, like this is ultimately as an anti RPG, it ends up actually being a lot more of an adventure game in terms of its gameplay. And while still like working with and subverting those RPG conventions. So yeah, really fascinating product and history.
Yeah, and I think it's particularly interesting because like in 1997, these aren't really independent developers, obviously, but they're still not working with a big studio, and we're not seeing sort of the subversions of games that we see now, which has become so common that it's almost like throw a quarter in any direction, and
Hmm.
you'll find an indie game that's playing around with genre to the point where they become so popular, and Undertale being maybe the most famous example of it. But um, yeah, I think that it like when I'm playing it, thinking back to the fact that like this is a 1997 game is the thing that like just keeps like blowing my mind about it, and what it's doing so early in the development cycle of video games in general. I think is really fascinating and cool.
Yeah, in a way, it makes like it almost feels appropriate that it just got finally localized and ported here just a couple of years ago because it does feel like it's just part of the early lineage of what we now have as like the indie RPG scene that you can like explore on Steam and itch and what have you. Like a lot of that kind of creativity like can be drawn back here with Moon and the stuff that Love to Lick went on to do.
Yeah, absolutely. What's funny about it is that you can, without it even being obvious, even in the opening hours of this game. So just kind of get into the game itself a little bit here. Even in the opening hours of this game, you can see them at poking fun at. I say the early hours. I say like the opening 15 minutes. You can see them poking fun at it, but in a way that is maybe a little bit. It might have taken a second if you didn't know what you were getting into. So those of you who haven't played Moon, the sort of the premise is that there's like this kid who's playing this video game that I believe is also called Moon, right? If I
Hmm.
remember correctly.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's right.
And he's playing this hero, and the game that he's playing is very much like to the point to where like it's I don't know how they didn't get in trouble for this unless Square or like, unless Enix gave them credit for it, is obviously like a takeoff on Dragon Quest. The fights are exactly the same. Some of the settings are exactly the same.
Start in a
Uh,
castle, talking to
yeah,
the king.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he tells
exactly.
you how much experience you need for the next
Yeah.
level, and
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. They do some really fun stuff with that later. But and I even think like the opening scroll at first, where I'm like, oh, like it's like giving you like the background story of what it is, and it's all this convoluted stuff, and I'm like, oh, I don't follow this, huh? Okay. And then it goes faster and faster, and the kid is obviously just scrolling through all this text that he doesn't want to
Yeah.
read. That is
Yeah.
I
so
thought that was a
like
great touch.
absurdly convoluted. I thought it was hilarious, and I just could imagine like Tim Rogers sitting there localizing it, just like with a smile on his face, laughing about how absurd it was.
Yeah, it's funny. There's like a part where it's saying that the world is under cover of darkness, and it says the holy undulations converted into unholy undulations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super funny. And it took me a second, even as a person who knew what this game was going to be, like to realize that I wasn't supposed to understand what that was. And I just imagine someone coming into this game not knowing what it is, and just how they would react to that. I think it would be really fun to see that. But then you like sort of see the kid playing through the game, and you see him like selecting these different save files as he gets further through, and then eventually he has to fight the great dragon at the end, who apparently is responsible for those undulations. um, And then right as you're like finishing off the final battle and like you're doing like these absurd moves, like the first time you hit a slime, you use like this super powered magic move that just like obliterates it. It's really funny. Um, and then obviously you're finishing the game, and this kid has played it for like 20 hours or so. And you can see the save files look almost exactly like Final Fantasy IV, which is really fun. And then your mom tells you to go to bed, because that's what my mom was usually telling me to do when I was in the middle of playing an RPG, was to go to bed or get off, or it's time to, I don't know, come have dinner. We had a Super Nintendo in the kitchen while I was a kid. It's a long story. We had a Super Nintendo in the kitchen, and I remember I had to run through the Tower of Fanatics. I'm not kidding, like 6 different times because I could never finish it because my mom said it was time for dinner. So I had to walk up that stupid tower so many times. When I did it this last time when we were podcasting about it, I was like, I'm putting on infinite health mode and I am blasting through this immediately because I still think about that every time I go in. But the minute the kid goes to sleep, he gets sucked into. I think we eventually. I don't think we know this yet, but I've just know about the game. What's called Real Moon, where it's like the real story behind what is happening in Moon.
Mhm.
And you're this kid who you run into like all these people talking in town. And can we talk about the sound effects for a second of the people who are talking, because I think they're infuriating. I cannot stand them.
Yeah, they're like recordings or clippings of like uh voice recordings. So sometimes you can make out like words being said in them, but they're usually sped up or scrambled. And sometimes the characters, like depending on what type of character they are, they'll have like a particular type of voice being used. So like I remember the guy who sells you records, he has like a almost like a radio kind of voice when he talks to you. Um, so it's like a neat little touch, but it is, they're just scrambled nonsense that they say basically.
Yeah, I'd really like to know where they got all these different voice clippings from, because sometimes I catch some like pretty like strange words, and I've also caught words like in different languages. So it seems like depending on the NPC,
Hmm.
they'll have like a different language. Like I think the main character's grandma, Granby, is has like French voice clippings. I know
Yes.
the spirit that like levels you up has Polish voice clippings. But for the most part it seems to be English and Japanese, but it was interesting to catch yeah, voice clippings from like other languages I know, and just be like, what is going on here? What is the source of all these?
And I think the record collector guy says nostalgia, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah.
I'm like, that sounds like a record guy. I mean, like, it's a really like it's so striking. But like in the opening hours when like they're all like you show up in that town, and they're all talking at the same time. I was like, I need this sound to stop right now. And I was like going into the menu settings, like, is there a way for me to turn this down? The answer is no, of course there's not. It's a 1997 game.
Yeah.
They don't have sound mixing options, but I eventually got used to it. But it definitely grated on me. But yeah, like you sort of get plopped into this opening town, and you see the hero walking through and just sort of like smacking people as he's walking by. And it seems like he's almost like this empty vessel shell sort of thing. I don't really know what that's all about quite yet. Um, but he, it's kind of wreaking havoc on the town almost immediately. And then when you walk outside, you see him just like murder this like helpless slime, which you previously played through yourself. And then you find out that one of your jobs is to like restore the spirits of these different monsters who the hero is destroying as he's going through these towns, which kind of becomes like sort of part of the gameplay loop. And then eventually you run into your Granby and you sort of find out that she thinks you're this kid who everybody thinks is dead. Maybe the kid is dead. I don't really know what the whole story behind that is. I have some guesses, but yeah, and then that sort of becomes the gameplay loop of you like sort of walking behind the hero, and fixing his problems, but also fixing the problems or fixing his horrors that he commits, but also helping the people around the town. It's just like all sort of like what you're doing with that. So, what did you guys think about sort of the opening moments of this game?
Yeah, I thought it was like really clever setup. Clearly, you experienced that first version of Moon at the beginning of the game to be like, oh yeah, this is Dragon Quest. This is like the generic RPG, and then you start seeing things from like an outsider's perspective of just like this hero is so like visually weird looking with just like just a comically enormous sword just like tied to him because like it's like goes well beyond his height, and he's just kind of like clomping around, chasing dogs around town. And it's just like, okay, he's going into people's houses, taking their stuff, but ultimately they're like, well, he's the only one who can kill the dragon, so we gotta support him. So it just creates like this whole outsider perspective that's a really just clever and cute subversion of kind of the generic RPG, while at the same time kind of just like showing the horrors of just like mass murdering of animals that the hero ends up committing.
Yeah, I think it's a really clever premise, especially because of how like weird the game will get, becomes as you progress and the characters and everything. That they chose this kind of, premise that now you're in the world of an RPG and you have to like react or fix the things that are happening that the hero's doing. A lot of the games that were inspired by Moon that would come later kind of abandon that, but I think it's a really good premise to get the player hooked in, especially when they maybe don't have any reference for a game like this. Because you're just naturally invested in that idea because you've likely played so many RPGs, and it's like, oh, well, this is like a really interesting, way to get me into it, and kind of give you a way to connect to it. Because so many parts of the rest of the game can be a little esoteric or hard to understand, but that kind of ties everything together.
Yeah, like and RPGs at that time, like in the early to mid '90s, like there was far less like kind of narrative and
Hmm.
like experimentation with like different worlds and stuff. Like you're mostly just getting like a slight deviation of the Dragon Quest formula. So people who play video games regularly, like they were just exposed to so much of what this game shows you that having it just be like a direct subversion of that, and just like no, you are in this world, and just seeing what normally happens from a different perspective is just a really clever narrative move.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like sort of it's looking at sort of like the static nature, especially of early '90s RPGs, like of how we sort of see the world through a very sort of limited scope, and you can take that to a larger philosophical end, I suppose, if you want. Although I'm not really sure that I want to go there, but like sort of the way that we experience the narrative through one lens, and I think that obviously like that has become less true in video games, but it's still a thing that you see, right? Like you're still going through and experiencing it from one perspective, doing it one way. You're given a task, you go do it, and obviously games have started to look at that, like something like Undertale or Nier Automata or whatever. But I think it's a really interesting way of criticizing a way, not criticizing, just like sort of subverting and playing around with a certain way of telling a story.
Yeah, and I think too, it's like so much of what you see the hero doing at the beginning is like a power fantasy, and it's like you're getting the other side of what that power fantasy would look like to the people or creatures inhabiting the game, right? So I think that's not really a thing that people often think of when they think of RPGs. Like, oh, this is such a power fantasy. I'm going to make myself super powerful and destroy everything, and like what that would look like, but it makes you examine that idea in a way that I think is pretty interesting. And like make you reckon with, oh, well, it makes you think of all the RPGs that you've played, and then like, am I having this effect on the world of those games that the hero is having in Moon?
Yeah, because it also just shows how much those classic RPGs like pander to you as a player
Hmm.
from both like a narrative and game design perspective, where it's just like,
Yeah,
yeah, you're totally entitled to just go into people's houses,
yeah,
go into all of their rooms and raid their drawers for their clothing and
right.
whatever. Yeah, so in that sense, it's very very well done and quite funny to see as well.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting too because like really early RPG type things, like think about something like Ultima, like that did a much better job of addressing the
Hmm.
consequences of your actions, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah.
Ultima
Um,
4, yeah.
yeah, like I couldn't. I couldn't progress in Ultima 4 because I was so little, and I was just like, "Yes, I will try to steal from you," and then I just get smacked down immediately. And I think that you can sort of see that was a sort of I think PC games probably did a better job of it, but I wasn't playing PC games when I was younger. Did a better job of looking at consequences. Whereas this game is like, okay, like all these console RPGs, and there's a reason that Dragon Quest sort of popularizes the genre, right? Because it creates that power fantasy where like you can fail, but you're not going to make choices that are going to be so off the beaten path that like they can't. They're not going to like ruin your ability to progress or whatever. That power that is given to you there, whereas this is like, all right, let's kind of pull some of those ideas from those earlier PC games, and sort of lay them over top of the classic console JRPG experience in a way that I think is really clever.
Yeah, because even in those like RPGs, when you were helping like NPCs, like in a seemingly like altruistic way, like from a narrative perspective, like in reality, as a player, you're completing side quests in order to get more stuff, to get better stuff, to be stronger and continue your journey. So here it's just great that the main narrative and there doesn't seem to be a ton of like, or I guess like the main narrative is also side quests, like you're just trying to help as many
Yeah.
people as possible, but you're only doing it to like boost your compassion and get love and spread love throughout the world. That's the only incentive.
Well, I mean that's true to some degree, but I still think that I think that you have to, in order to progress the game, which we haven't gotten to yet. I guess we can talk about that now. Like the way the gameplay loop works is like you're given a certain amount of stamina, and like there's basically like a day night cycle, and you can sort of see in the top left corner what time of day it is now, and then what time of day it is that you're going to collapse and get a game over. So, and you basically have a certain amount of time to complete a certain number of tasks, and then you need to go to bed before that meter runs out, or you will die. Which I'm sure everybody who's on this podcast the first time through, they were like walking around, just kind of clomping around the town, with their wooden shoes. It sounds like, and you just drop dead. And it's like, oh, game over, and then you just lose all your progress. There's no auto saving, anything like that. You save when you hit the bed, and so like by kind of sticking with the monsters, I will kind of talk about the side quests in a second here, but by restoring the monsters to their bodies, their souls to their bodies after the hero has murdered them, you gain more love, and then the more love you gain, the more the only way you can actually like kind of expend that love is by going to bed. And there's some like weird creature, I don't even know what the heck it is, that says like, "Hey, you've helped these creatures out or these people out, and we're going to raise your level to I don't know, love savant or something." um,
I'm a love
and then the
intern
more
right now,
yeah, love
personally.
intern, yeah. I don't know, I'm like level 22 or something. I can't remember what it's called. They're basically calling me like a love expert at this point. I'm like, wait. Uh, and the more love you get, then the more you can explore. So you get sort of the ability to go around a little bit more. So I still feel like there is an incentive to complete these side quests, and I think there was one that I did, which oh gosh, it's like one of the most racist parts of a video game I've seen in a long time. That I had to have a day and a half's worth of love to travel to this place to go do like this mini game.
Oh,
So
the yeah, the
yeah.
island you're talking
Yeah.
about?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. We'll get to that. But so I still think there's an incentive to it, but it still feels like at least the incentive is always helping at the same time, right? So I don't know. What do you guys think about sort of that the way that all kind of works?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, the way that so all the quests that you do, I mean, most of them are if it's not the animals, which are just like returning their souls to their bodies, then most of them revolve around like human connection or making connections or bonds between the characters. And so, a lot of times when you're going through the process of doing these side quests, basically, you will get items from the characters that you will need to then progress, which is very typical adventure game stuff. But I think what's interesting about it is that rather than taking like a, typical like point and click where you get like a tool and then you're going to use this tool to solve a puzzle, it's usually an item that is like meaningful or sentimental either
Mhm.
to the person who's giving it to you or to the person that you're then going to show it to. And I think that's kind of an interesting little wrinkle that kind of you know, reinforces the themes of the game, that it's like about forming these human connections, and that makes it feel a little different than your typical gaining items in an adventure game or an RPG, even if like the basic mechanics of it are very similar.
Yeah, and I thought it was quite interesting how the first couple hours of the game, when you only basically have enough stamina slash love to just navigate around Castletown, felt pretty distinct from the things that come after when you're allowed to explore the more open world. Because Castletown, uh, honestly reminds me a lot of Majora's Mask, and I wouldn't
Yeah.
be surprised at all if the developers of Majora's Mask played Moon and were inspired by it. Because basically what you're doing before you even have like animals to save is you're just talking to the different NPCs in Castletown, hearing about their problems, and basically just like following them around. And they all have like schedules,
Hmm.
which just brings them around town, and it teaches you more about the characters. And if you do that enough, then you'll probably learn something that allows you to solve a little puzzle. Like you'll like the bartender, for example, tells you once you have like enough stamina to last until like nighttime, you buy a drink there. She tells you about a ring that meant a lot to her, and she lost it, and then you have to go find that ring and bring it back to her, and that's like how you get some love. That's you're basically getting your first like love points and level ups just from following these people's lives around the castle town, learning about them and helping them out, which I thought was really cool, especially as a huge fan of Majora's Mask.
Yeah, and there's like a density to like the quests around the castle town because like you'll get them as you start getting the stamina to explore around. Like one of my favorite ones was like there was this old man who was just super grumpy and kicked me out of his house because he hates the Westerners who live next door.
Right? Yeah.
And if you sneak in while the windmill is going, I think this is the windmill one. You sneak in and then like you can figure out that he likes this particular song to be played. And like you play it outside of his house, almost like a say anything moment, and then he comes outside and he like gives you some love. And yeah, I think that it's really interesting also like the puzzly nature of it, right? Like you have to kind of figure out like when can you come into this place? When is this person going to be active? Do I need to talk to them when they're walking to this particular place?
Hmm.
There are some people who actually, and I haven't even gotten this deep into it. Like there are certain days of the week that you can only do certain things, and I haven't had to do any puzzles yet where I've only approached on that day of the week. Because I will admit, like I really respect the way that this game is doing it, but there are times that I get a little frustrated by just how like particular the way that I have to solve things is, and sometimes it just feels like I'm just kind of walking around and like things like sort of randomly happen as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very trial and error.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And sometimes, yeah, just pure randomness. And I mean, when we get to the animals, like they have like these descriptions, right, that serve as like hints for how to revive them. And yeah, sometimes the hints are pretty interesting and engaging, and you start thinking about it and a solution comes to mind. And sometimes like you're just walking around and then you see the spirit of the animal already and you touch it, and then it's just like, oh, I guess I solved the puzzle. Even though like you just randomly stumbled upon it.
yeah, and I guess we can talk about the animals too, because as you mentioned, like outside of just like kind of walking around town, and I think that as you're walking around town, like you might get like someone's business card, and you
Hmm.
show it to the certain person, and they're like, "Hey, on the back it says, come meet the king in his chambers at night, away from the counselor." We're like, "Oh," and like the king is
Yeah, that was a really cool moment.
yeah, I thought that was like one of my favorite like discoveries that I just made on my own. But the animals, when you find them, every time like you get like this little message, as you said, that says like, "Hey, um, this person doesn't like sound, or this animal doesn't like sound, or something," and then you have to kind of figure out like, "Hey, what does that mean?" Um, and there are times where I was like, "Oh, that makes sense," and there are other times where like I'm sure Tim Rogers, who probably had a lot of fun putting these little clues together that had to be based on what we would understand, but are also obviously based on the original Japanese. Like, how did you decide how to make this more or less opaque? And most of the time, I feel like by the time I figured it out, I was like, oh, that makes sense now that I figured it out. But like the clue didn't get me there.
Yeah.
Randomness got me there. Or like later, there's this area that has like these things that like rise and fall based on the time of
Oh, the
day.
cactus. Yeah.
Yeah. And that area drives me insane because I feel like I have to go through like a whole day cycle to get like a single animal almost every time. Like there's this mole that I can only get in the bottom left corner at night, but it has like it's during the day, but I have to go there at night and then wait for a half a day cycle to go. And like, oh, there he is. Cool. I just spent 20 minutes to get this 2 points of love. Cool. So there are times that I find it a little annoying, and like just like not super fun to engage with, but it's just like so fascinating in the way that it's doing it that I respect it, even if I don't always love it. Haha.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how they came up with so many different ways for you to like capture the animals, despite that there's like very little that like mechanics in this game. Like you really can't do very much at all. It's like you can show items to people, you can pick
Hmm.
things up, you can, talk to or, use the interact button to catch the animal, and that's it. And yet there's so many different ways that they implemented like little puzzles for you to still get them and them all be different and kind of challenging in that way. I think it's pretty cool that they were able to figure out so many different ways. But the flip side of that is that a lot of them are like way outside the box, like thinking, and just would not be that easy to figure out without a guide. Um, so, I think it's some of it is like the limitations that they were under, make some of them like really esoteric, but I think a lot of that's intentional too.
Yeah, that's a good point about like how varied the gameplay can feel with so few verbs as a player that you have. That's a pretty impressive game design achievement alone. And yeah, like another kind of more frustrating aspect of the game is like the backtracking. Like you do get like a fast travel tool slash plant companion that can help you like get to areas you've already visited a bit quicker, but it only works one way. So ultimately, like you still have to do quite a bit of backtracking, and a lot of that is just slowly clomping around on foot. So that can also feel kind of tedious, especially before you have like enough love slash stamina to just kind of be walking like super freely. You still have to be like mindful about like making sure you get to bed before you faint and things like that. But the backtracking does one the way I can justify it from a game design perspective is that chances are you're not going to know the solutions to all of the animal corpses you come across first time around. At least I didn't. Um, but as you're backtracking, like it allows you to see those corpses again, revisit the hint, and maybe like a solution will now occur to you. And that happened to me a few times, and that just made the fact that I do have to like just clop around the world so much a little more interesting. So even though like there are multiple aspects of this game that are, like feel frustrating, especially like by modern standards, like I can't deny that it all feels like very well considered from a design perspective.
It helps that the game isn't very like punishing. Like you don't really like I mean, it can be frustrating if you stay out, past your stamina, and then you have to like you get a game over and you have to restart from that
Hmm.
day. But outside of that, there's not really points where you lose health, or there's not really any other game over states. So you can kind of like explore freely and do whatever you want as long as you're mindful of where your stamina's at. And there's not really a bunch of like hazards and things to look out for. And like later games that some of the Love developers would make do have that, like Tulip is very punishing and you
Yeah, I've
have
heard
health.
that.
Yeah, and you can lose health from like basically a lot of things. If you do things even a little bit wrong, you'll lose health and that game becomes like super punishing because of it. So I like that this game kind of understands that with the amount of experimentation and wandering you're going to have to do to not make it so punishing, um, outside of if you're not paying attention to your stamina. But you can get the food and extend your stamina and stuff, so that can get you out of like most bad situations.
It's amazing how, especially in the early game, like a walk back to a house can be like so stressful.
Oh my god, I
You're
know.
like, I was like, I'm like walking, and like, I guess we have mentioned that like you start walking like a little bit more laboredly, I guess is the bad
Mhm.
way to say it. And you can, it just, it in a game that is not very stressful, it is definitely like a very like It feels like mostly a pretty chill experience, but that walk back can be extremely stressful.
Yeah,
And
and
yeah,
you have one cookie from Granby, and you
yeah,
eat it, and it's just like, "This gives me, like, 30 more seconds, come on,
yeah.
let's go."
Yeah, it is definitely a way of doing it. And I agree. I think that the way that the game is put together feels very intentional, that it forces you to engage with the world, and it's very nonlinear, which I guess we haven't said. Like, you can kind of just go anywhere.
Mhm.
Once you have the stamina to do it, you can just walk here, there, anywhere, whatever.
Oh my
But
god, it's an open world?
right? It's crazy. It is really. And I was able to get even to like this like super high tech area where like I'm like I don't have the items to really engage in this space yet. But and yeah, it also kind of getting to that like how to get to that high tech world. You have to have like these passes to get in, and there's like a
Mhm.
couple of different ways to get them. You can basically get them from a woman who is like the Westerners who live next to that grumpy old man, or you can just like pay for it. um, and then if you go and you show that pass to the king, he's like mad that his is a different color. And so he gives you the better one because the king is like a delightful character. I love how he has like a billboard outside of the castle. It says what level the hero is at right now. He's like, he's level 2. He's gonna make it, and he's the one who's writing these news stories apparently.
Mhm.
And how the king is just like sort of this doofus
Yeah,
who
he's
likes
always
to
making
feed
his
birds.
little crayon drawings, and you
Yeah.
can go in his room and look at his, like, crayon drawings of his, like, master plans and stuff.
Yeah, it's super fun. And one thing we haven't talked about either is like there are all these like mini games that are sort of like spread throughout the game too that are also that in sometimes actually like gate your progression a little bit if you can't pass them. So there's like this guy who I don't remember. He's like trying to worship some god, I think. Um, and you have to like do like this sequence of different
Oh,
puzzles where
yeah,
one
Oh,
of them
Adder.
yeah.
is like,
Yeah, so he thinks that the hero is God.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to like remember how he says certain things. And man, I
Mhm.
was stuck on that for way longer than I would like to admit. Because it varies. Like I was trying to screenshot it and it wasn't working, and it goes so fast that like it didn't function for me. Or the one that I really didn't like is when you get flown off to like this island, Bali Bali Island, I think.
Mhm.
And you're trying to play drums with these monkeys with like this really really over the top racist depiction of an islander. um and like it's sometimes I think the mini games are cool and fun, sometimes I think they are obtuse. But it's all like it's all really varied, as you guys were saying, like within this like sort of like small space that obviously didn't have a lot of budget to do things with. They're like really creative with the ways they're doing it. And there's one where you're trying to guess what music this DJ is playing, and I didn't have the money to buy the records from him, so I just had to like literally screenshot the descriptions of every single record, and then like he would say like it's like this, and then I would go and I would look at every single screenshot to figure out. I'm like, okay, and then eventually I managed to get it, and then the reward was not worth it, whatever it was. So like there's so many different ways and places to engage with this game that I think it's really interesting what they're able to do with such a limited sort of um, gameplay mechanic element.
Yeah, the reward wasn't worth it. The reward is love. It's spreading love, Zach. You're missing the entire point of this game.
Yeah, the mini so there's one mini game, the Jinkikistan or whatever, that have you guys gotten to that one yet?
I
I'm
don't
not
believe
sure.
so.
Okay, so that one, they actually so Onion Games released a game not that long ago called Mon Amour, which is like a basically like an upgraded version of that mini game. And I was reading an interview with Kimura, and he was saying that like everybody hates that mini game in Moon, and he was like not happy with it, so he wanted to like go back to that mini game and like make a new version of it that's like the best version or whatever. So they're still like going back to this game and taking elements of it and trying to like redo it or revisit it, which I think is really interesting. And that's a game you can buy on Steam now, actually.
Yeah, I also just like how some of the mini games are just contextualized with like the larger world. Like the is it Adder who's the priest?
Yeah, Adder. Yep.
Yeah, so like that whole like quest line like is also just like showing how like people can use like religious belief to exploit other people. Like after you pass like his tests of like uh like identifying his different like voice lines that he does, or like identifying like little facial expressions he does, which I thought were just like really cute mini game solutions. Um, that he then like decides to like that he'll charge you for um like getting some insight and hints about like what other NPCs in the game you can still get love from, or like with the record seller, um like that whole like you can like yeah there's actually like records in the game that you can just scroll through. It's like done in like a very like satisfying way, kind of like replicating like being in a record store where you get to like see these graphics of like each of the covers of the single, and then you get to hear like the review, which is just like a nicely written little summary of just like what it sounds like. And then once you like buy in the records and invest in them a bit, like that becomes essentially your soundtrack for playing the game,
Hmm.
because this is a game that has like very minimal like diegetic music in the game. Like I think Castletown during the day is one of the few places that actually like have like
Yeah,
an actual
actual music.
overworld
Yeah,
theme. Otherwise,
The
like you're just
Claire de Lune outside of your Grammy's house.
Granby's
yeah,
house.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That's a great
and
one.
then the
Yeah.
Mushroom Forest has music too. But
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but it's just cool that otherwise, like you can decide as a player, oh, do I just want to like stroll through and listen to the nature sounds of each of the different environments I'm strolling through, or do I want to put on some tunes that I decided to like buy off of a whim because of the way because I liked the specific cover of this single, or I liked the way that the seller described the sound. It's really cool. It allows you to like personalize your play experience a bit in a way I really like.
It kind of gets with the whole like approach and how you want play the music that you want, sort of play through it at your pace. And you know, I've been playing like whatever the song that the old man liked. It's kind of been like my background for most of it, and just makes it all feel a little more exciting to me.
Mhm.
Which is like sort of what I want, right? So I like that it allows you to experience it in the way that you want to, and also kind of like the different ways you discover things. Like one of my favorite side quests was related to your dog. I can't remember the name of the dog. Um,
Tau.
Tao, yeah, yeah. Where you're training him with bones because Granby is sick, and like you're trying to train him, and you also like at night you can follow him, and then eventually you can find a hole that he's digging, and if you wait long enough, you find like some arrow. I don't even know what the point of it is, along with some treats of his, and like kind of how. And also, yeah, you need to use him like barking at certain moments while his night walk is happening
Yeah,
to
yeah.
get some of those things to happen. And that felt like really fun for me to discover. And also because it's a dog and it was really fun to train the dog. And it was like a really easy mini game. But yeah, it's just there's so many like little pockets of things to discover. And I will admit that like I wish that like it would give me like I don't know like a Rolodex of all the descriptions of the monsters, so that I didn't have to like try to like go look at it, remember, or something to track things that is not literally paper and pencil, which is what I've had to do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Be
there is a
nice to have like a bomber's guide in the style of
Yeah,
Majora's Mask.
yeah.
yeah,
You
yeah.
can go on the there's the TV and you can watch the
Oh yeah,
program and it'll
yeah.
tell you like which ones you have,
Hmm.
but that's like pretty much the only guidance that you get.
Hmm. Yeah, there isn't a ton, but it's still really fun to engage with. There any other side quests or like early game things that you guys really enjoyed that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, there's a one of my favorite side quests in the game is the one of the guardsmen in the castle, Bilby. So if you go to there's like a balcony that has binoculars on it, like at the furthest most part of
Oh,
the
that's
castle.
there for a reason. That's cool. Okay.
Yeah, so you can well you can use the binoculars and you can like look into like a woman's apartment, which is a little
Oh,
weird.
Oh,
rear
that's not
window
great, but okay.
style.
Yeah.
Yeah, but other than that, so he will go out there only on like solar days, and he's like flying a paper airplane that he made. And he tells you the story that like him and his, you know, he and his wife got divorced and he has like a 7-year-old son and he doesn't get to see his son that much anymore, but he promised his son that he would make like the perfect paper airplane. And so he goes out there every solar day and like throws the airplane. And so if you keep going out there on those days, he'll slowly get a little bit better and the plane will go a little bit further. And then the toy kid, Noge, the little puppet kid,
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah.
he comes out there like the third time you go out there, and teaches Bilby how to like make the plane and
Oh my
fly
goodness, that's
further.
so cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I haven't encountered that yet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
me
it's like
either.
this really heartwarming moment between the little boy puppet and Bilby, where he's kind of getting that experience with his son, even though he's like far away from his son, which is just like a really touching, like heartfelt little side quest that you can do. And then that it'll, Noge if you do that, then there's a part later with the little boy, the puppet boy, um, that he also has like a quest that comes from that later. But that's like one of the early things you can do that I thought was like really cool.
That sounds delightful, and I will be doing that the minute I spin it back up.
Yeah, for sure. That sounds
That's
awesome.
awesome. Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah, I thought it is fun. I haven't encountered like that aspect of Bilby yet, but I have encountered him in the bar because he goes there some nights and he's just drowning away his sorrows. And he told me about his divorce and things like that. And that's just like the kind of like personality and flavor like I was looking for with this game. And I know it's like it also implied that the baker, the bread maker, he's also like an alcoholic. I don't know what like his exact side quest is, like if there's more I can do
You
to
have to go like right after the doors close, I think.
oh.
Right after nightfall, and you get some pretty good weirdness from that. So I
Oh,
have done
okay.
that one.
Oh, that's a good tip. I'll be looking into that shortly then.
I was just gonna say if you notice that Bilby's in the bar, then you should go back to the castle and see what the other guardsman is doing, because
Okay.
he also does stuff when the other guardsman's not there to watch him.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's one of like you could probably get through this whole game and not experience any of the stuff we just discovered, right? We
Yeah,
just
because you
discussed.
you only need like I think it's 4.5 days worth of like love stamina to actually see the ending. So you don't have to
Okay.
do
Okay.
every single thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like that it gives you that sort of that ability to like sort of run into these things, but you don't have to. But I kind of want to see all of it before I clear, just because I think so much of it is so fun to
Yeah,
engage
a
with.
lot of the hidden stuff has been like the most rewarding aspects
Hmm.
of the story so far. And I haven't even got to Bali Bali Island yet, which I'm guessing is like where you go with the birdcage ride.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah,
yes.
the first time I attempted that, I did not last long into that ride. I'm like, "Please land, bird, you're actually gonna make me die."
Well, I thought for sure that I was gonna die because I had maybe just a little over a day and a half left, and then I was like, "Oh, once I hit the ground, whatever I do there, I'm just gonna die." But actually, as long as you have a day and a half, you're fine
I
because
think
then you
at
can
this
come
point I could do
back
it then.
as soon as you're done with that. I found that minigame pretty challenging. So, but it's a pretty good reward. I actually think you might have to do it. I think it's one of the things you need to clear the
Okay,
game.
okay.
I think, yeah. Um, but yeah, that's sort of our experiences with the opening hours of Moon. We still have a lot of side quests to experience, and the ending, which I hear is really cool, of this game, and I'm excited to chat about it, which we will be doing again in a couple weeks. So make sure you tune in for that. But let's kind of talk about what's coming up next. And kind of come into the housekeeping stuff. So, as I said, in 2 weeks we will talk about Moon, and usually you might notice that Game Journal is usually back to back, but next week is episode 400. Yes, that's right. We've managed to record 400 episodes of this show at this point, and Slocy will be hosting that, and it's sort of we'll say a Shark Tank like experience. I will say that we may have already recorded it, and that maybe it was a super fun time. So that's what's coming up over the next couple of weeks. In February, I know we have a pretty rough plan of what we're going to be doing for some of the off topics, but I know that our game journal for February will be Dragon Quest XI in celebration of the Year of the Dragon. And I'm excited to listen to those episodes because Dragon Quest XI is one of my all-time favorite games. I
Same
didn't
here.
necessarily have the time to carve out 100 hours to play it again, but I am excited to listen to those
How dare
episodes.
you, Zach?
I know, right? I'm too busy, I don't know, wasting my life on Soulsborne games or something.
Yeah, so says the guy who just played like 6 Soulsborne games.
Look, I have moved on. I'm playing Yakuza 0 right now in preparation for Yakuza 8. So if you want to get in touch with us, you can email us retro@rpgfan.com. Slowcy checks that pretty regularly. We love feedback there. You can also give us feedback on all kinds of social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're on Threads now as well. You can also find us on Discord. All of our episodes now, those of you who are listening, are being uploaded to YouTube as well. So we have a YouTube presence with some videos. And then we also, you can listen to all the podcasts there as well nowadays. We also have a shop, which we've had for a long time, with shirts and merchandise. We are in the waning hours of your ability to buy 25th anniversary stuff. I think that closes in about a week. So if you want to get your hands on some of that sweet, sweet 25th anniversary merch, check it out there. And also, you can buy our review card book, which is super cool. I'm looking at a couple of copies of it right now. 300 pages of our review cards, which is something that I never thought I'd see my name in print for RPGs, but here we are. And we also have two other podcasts, Random Encounter, usually hosted by John O. Logan, about randomness, about current events. I believe you might hear Aleks on that pretty soon here. And also Rhythm Encounter, about RPG music, usually on the other 2 weeks of the 2 weeks that Random Encounter's on, usually hosted by Mike Salvato and often by Hillary Andriff. You can review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or whatever they call it now. I don't know, Spotify. You can find us in lots of different places, and we love feedback. But before we sign off, let's talk about where we can reach the different panelists, starting with you, Ben.
Yeah, you can email me at benloganlove@gmail.com.
And Aleks.
You can email me at alexfranacek@gmail.com.
I love that none of us have real social media presences. You can also email me, ZachW@RPGFan.com. You can also find me on RPG Fan's Discord as ZachW. If you ping me there, I will see it. So yeah, that's it, everybody. I really enjoyed, even though I didn't love my opening hours, that I respected them. I enjoyed them. I'm curious to see what else I can discover and what else I can find. Maybe this game is criticizing me and my god complex as an RPG player a little bit. I was like, I want to fight some stuff. But no, it's an interesting experience, and I'm really glad I'm getting the chance to play it and chat about it with you guys. So, thank you, everybody. Good night and good luck.